My wife belittled my cooking passion, then cheated with a chef. So I opened a restaurant, got famous, and she begged me to come back. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and honestly, if I could sum up my childhood in one memory, it's the sound of onions sizzling in a pan. Even as a kid, I'd sneak into the kitchen before sunrise, quietly rummaging through the fridge while everyone else slept. I'd pull out leftovers and scraps, whatever I could find, and start experimenting, praying I wouldn't wake my parents. Chopping, mixing, tasting, making an absolute mess. Cooking wasn't just fun. It was where my anxiety disappeared, where nothing and no one could touch me. But life has a way of making you ashamed of the things you love. My wife Amanda never got it. She was always the loudest voice in the room, always right, always ready to judge. I remember the first time I cooked for her while we were dating, a nervous, messy pasta dish with way too much garlic. She forced a smile, poked at it, then later laughed about it on the phone to her best friend, not knowing I could hear her through the paper-thin wall. "He plays with food like a kid," she said. Thank God he has a real job. Still, I kept cooking. After work, when she'd crash on the couch with her phone, I'd head to the kitchen and lose myself in recipes I found online. I tried to share my excitement, showing her a perfectly browned steak or a soup I'd spent hours on, but she'd barely look up. "That's nice, honey. Don't forget to do the dishes." Sometimes she'd tease me in front of friends. Maybe one day he'll make something edible. They'd all laugh, and I'd force a grin, swallowing that hot, prickly feeling in my chest. Most nights I'd eat alone. Amanda would order takeout or just pick at whatever I'd made. I kept telling myself maybe she'd come around, maybe one day she'd be proud of me. But every time she tossed my dinner aside or made a joke at my expense, that hope shrank just a little bit more. And there was this look in her eyes every time she caught me in the act, apron tied tight, flour on my shirt, like she'd caught me doing something shameful, childish. It made me start hiding, cooking only when she was out, cleaning up before she saw. Even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that the thing that made me feel most alive was exactly what made me small in her eyes. And yet, I never stopped hoping she'd finally see what it meant to me. That maybe just once she'd look at something I'd made and really see me. But she never did. I always thought holding down a stable job would buy me a little bit of peace at home, or at least respect. I worked in IT. Good money, solid hours, nothing glamorous, but it kept us comfortable. Every morning I'd tie my tie, grab my briefcase, and walk out that door hoping I was doing enough. But Amanda wanted more. Or maybe she just wanted different. She had this habit of comparing me to every guy in her circle. "Jessica's husband just made partner at his firm," she'd say, flipping through her phone as I packed my lunch. Or, "Why don't you try networking like Megan's boyfriend? He just got promoted. It never ended." If I suggested we save for a vacation or splurge on a nicer place, she'd scoff. "Maybe if you were a little more ambitious, we could actually do things like that." The message was always the same. No matter how hard I worked, it wasn't enough. One night after a long shift, I came home with a small smile. I'd posted a photo of a steak I'd cooked to an online food forum, and it blew up. Hundreds of likes, people asking for my recipe. I showed Amanda, heart pounding, hoping she'd finally be impressed. She glanced at my phone, rolled her eyes, and said, "Maybe you should put half that effort into your real job. Likes don't pay the mortgage." I laughed, pretending it didn't hurt, but her words stuck to my ribs like cold oatmeal. Even at family dinners, Amanda wouldn't let me have the floor. If I mentioned cooking, she'd cut me off. "Let's not bore everyone with his little hobby." Her dad would look at me with this half smirk, and her mom would change the subject. I learned to stay quiet, to make myself smaller at the table, to become invisible so they could all feel big. I could see the disappointment growing in her face every day. It was like I was auditioning for a part I'd never win, no matter how hard I tried. Sometimes I wondered if she even remembered why she married me in the first place. All I wanted was to share the parts of myself that made me happy. Instead, every effort felt like a strike against me, another reason for her to remind me of everything I wasn't. The worst part? No matter how small I shrank, it still wasn't enough for her, and the cracks between us just kept getting wider. You'd think after years together, you get used to someone's way of teasing you, but there's a difference between playfulness and the kind of ridicule that carves scars into you. Amanda's jokes weren't light anymore. They started to feel like little knives, each one finding its way into some soft spot I'd tried to protect. If I posted a dish online and people left nice comments, she'd screenshot them, add her own captions, and share them in the group chat with her friends. "Look at Gordon Ramsay over here," she'd write, or "Should I buy him a chef hat for his birthday?" The laughter always came fast and hard, except from me. At first, I'd laugh along, pretending I could take it. But when she tossed my roast chicken straight into the trash one night, no explanation, just a disgusted face and a flippant, "Who even eats this stuff?" It broke something in me. The smell of that bird, skin perfectly crisp, thyme and lemon in the air, was supposed to be comfort. Instead, it became a punchline, a joke I wasn't in on. The worst moments were in front of other people. Amanda would host her friends for wine nights, and as soon as I brought out anything homemade, she'd announce, "Careful, everyone, he's experimenting again." She'd mimic my concentration face, stirring an imaginary pot, eyes wide with fake seriousness. Everyone would laugh, and I'd stand there holding the plate, feeling like a little boy in an ill-fitting costume. I stopped inviting friends over. I stopped trying new things. The kitchen, once my sanctuary, became a minefield. Sometimes, late at night, I'd stare at the ceiling and ask myself if maybe she was right. Maybe I was ridiculous, a grown man with childish dreams. My hands would itch to cook something just to prove I could, but the shame would win and I'd end up scrolling through food blogs instead, watching strangers get the support I was starving for at home. It's wild how quickly you start to believe the worst things people say about you, especially when it's someone you love. Amanda's words started echoing in my own head, drowning out the voice that once cheered me on. I wondered if I'd ever find my way back to that boy in the kitchen, or if he'd finally been laughed out of existence for good. But Amanda wasn't done. The jokes were just getting started. When the world at home felt hostile, I retreated further into the only space Amanda couldn't reach, my own little corner of the internet. Late at night, after Amanda had gone to bed, I'd tiptoe into the kitchen with the lights low, cooking quietly so the clatter wouldn't wake her. The glow from my phone became my companion. I joined online cooking forums using a fake name, terrified she might stumble across my posts. For the first time, people responded to my recipes with genuine excitement. They'd ask questions, swap tips, and encourage me to try new things. "Dude, this looks incredible!" One guy wrote under my photo of homemade ramen. I actually smiled for the first time in weeks. That secret kitchen time became my therapy. I started taking on small catering gigs for neighbors, birthday parties, anniversaries, slipping out early on weekends while Amanda thought I was running errands. I'd come home with a pocket full of cash and a head buzzing with pride. I hid the money in an old coffee tin at the back of my closet, like some guilty teenager hiding cigarettes. I told myself if Amanda found it, I'd say it was just from selling old gadgets or something. There was something intoxicating about finally being appreciated. One evening, as I plated a batch of samosas for Mrs. Davis across the street, she patted my hand and whispered, "You've got a gift. Don't let anyone make you small." Her words stuck with me, lingering long after I'd scrubbed the pans and locked the door behind me. Sometimes I'd stand in the quiet kitchen, breathing in the last traces of garlic and ginger, and pretend, just for a moment, that I was somewhere I belonged. Still, every act of secret cooking came with a pulse of guilt. I hated hiding from Amanda, hated the double life. I wanted so badly to share this part of myself openly, to walk into the living room with a tray of something new and see pride, or even curiosity in her eyes. But I knew better. If she caught even a whiff of what I was doing, she'd crush it with a single stinging remark. The secret was both my refuge and my prison. I clung to it anyway, holding on to the little slices of joy wherever I could find them, praying the truth wouldn't come out before I was strong enough to stand up for it. But Amanda was getting restless, and secrets never stay safe forever. It started like any other Friday, Amanda getting ready in the bathroom, spritzing her hair with perfume I hadn't seen before, makeup flawless, eyes darting to her phone every few seconds. She announced she'd be out late with work friends, and for once didn't even bother with the details. "Don't wait up," she called, barely glancing at me as she slammed the front door behind her. The hours crawled by. I tried to lose myself in a new bread recipe, kneading dough until my knuckles ached, but the silence in the house pressed on my chest. Midnight came and went. At 1 a.m, I texted her, "Everything okay?" Nothing. By 2, I'd convinced myself she'd had too much to drink, maybe crashed at a friend's. Still, that twisting, sour worry gnawed at my gut. I stood at the sink, staring at the last loaf of bread cooling on the rack. The kitchen still warm but feeling suddenly cold. She finally stumbled in at almost 3, Heels in her hand, hair messy, smelling like wine and expensive cologne, a scent I didn't recognize. She tossed her bag on the table, eyes glazed, lips curled in a smirk I didn't know. I wanted to ask where she'd been, who she was with, but all I managed was, "You okay?" She just waved me off, staggering past me to the bedroom. For the first time in years, I didn't follow her. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every detail, the perfume, the half laugh in her voice, the look that said she'd already left, even while standing in the same room. In the morning, I found her phone on the counter, buzzing with notifications. I didn't touch it. Instead, I cleaned the kitchen in silence, scrubbing away at the counters, trying to erase the new feeling that had settled over our home. Dread. Later, she barely spoke to me, sipping coffee in her bathrobe, scrolling through her phone like I was invisible. I could see her texting, smiling at something I wasn't part of. When I reached for her hand, she pulled away. "I'm tired," she said, shutting herself in the bathroom. The distance between us felt like a canyon I could never cross. Something in me knew this wasn't just a rough patch. There was a chill in the house that wouldn't go away, a sign that whatever came next, I wasn't ready for it, but the truth was already moving, and I was about to get caught in its path. After that night, something inside our marriage snapped, even if the surface still looked mostly the same. Amanda moved through the house with this strange new energy, sharper, more impatient, as if my very presence irritated her. The kitchen, once just a stage for her jokes, became a borderland. She stopped eating anything I made, started leaving takeout cartons in the fridge, and once I caught her scrubbing a clean plate, muttering, "I don't want to smell that in here." I tried talking to her, tried to reach for the old warmth, but everything bounced off cold marble. "Is everything okay?" I'd ask in a voice too quiet, too cautious. She'd just shrug, barely glancing up from her phone. "Busy, tired, you wouldn't understand." She started going out more. New friends, new bars, new circles I wasn't invited into. One Saturday, I asked if she wanted to spend the evening together. She didn't even look up. "I have plans. Don't wait up." One night, while clearing empty wine bottles from the living room, I overheard her on the phone in the bedroom. Her laugh sounded softer, more genuine than I'd heard in years. "Yeah, he's still here. No, he doesn't mind. He's always off in his own little world anyway." I just stood there, fingers curled tight around a glass, my heart sinking as her words echoed. I felt like a stranger in my own house, a background character in a story that was supposed to be mine. The next morning, I found her wedding ring sitting on the bathroom counter. She hadn't lost it, she'd just stopped caring. I asked about it, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged. Didn't feel like wearing it. I wanted to scream, to ask who she was talking to late at night, why she looked at me with that tired, disgusted stare. Instead, I just nodded, pretending not to notice the cracks splintering through the foundation of everything I'd built. Sometimes, when she was gone, I'd walk the empty house, running my hand over the counter where I used to knead dough, the kitchen table where we'd once sat side by side. It all felt haunted now, like the ghost of the life I'd hoped for was still hanging around, watching me slowly disappear. But Amanda wasn't finished shattering what was left. I could feel something bigger coming, something that would break me for good. It happened on a random Tuesday, the kind of day where nothing feels special, except everything changed. Amanda was in the shower when her phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I tried to ignore it, but message after message kept popping up, each one lighting up the room in a way my presence never could. I shouldn't have looked, but something in me snapped. My hands shook as I picked it up. The screen was open to a string of messages with someone saved as Luca. The words hit me like a punch. Luca. Dinner last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you, Amanda. You're the only one who really gets me. Wish I could wake up next to you instead. Photos. Laughing in a restaurant I'd never been to, her hair curled just so, her smile real in a way I hadn't seen in years. My ears rang. My breath came in shallow, shaky bursts. She hadn't even bothered to delete the evidence, like she either didn't care if I found out or maybe she wanted me to. When she stepped out, towel around her, she saw me with her phone in hand. For the first time, she didn't lie. She just stared, chin lifted, defiant. "You're not enough for me," she said. "He is." Her voice was flat, almost bored, like she was reading off a grocery list. I tried to say something, anything. I asked, "How long?" She shrugged. "A few months. Maybe longer." I stopped counting. No apology, no regret. Just cold honesty that burned worse than any lie. "He's a real chef," she added, almost smiling. "Someone with ambition." I felt the words settle over me like a weight I'd never be able to shake off. She packed a bag that night. Her favorite dresses, the fancy shoes she used to wear only for me. No tears, no second thoughts. As she walked out the door, she looked back just long enough to say, "Don't wait up." "I don't think I'm coming back." The silence left behind was deafening. I stood in the empty hallway, surrounded by shadows, my hands still shaking, the world spinning off its axis. But the worst wasn't the betrayal. It was the realization that she'd stopped loving me a long time ago, and I'd been too desperate to notice. That was the moment I broke. And I had no idea how much further I could fall. The days after Amanda left blurred into one endless gray stretch. The house was impossibly quiet. No clatter of her shoes, no hum of her laughter, even if it was usually at my expense. I moved like a ghost through the rooms, avoiding our bedroom, sleeping on the couch with the TV on just for noise. Friends reached out at first, awkward and unsure, but after a week or two, the texts dried up. My own parents called once. "You'll bounce back. Just keep your head down." They never asked if I was eating or if I was okay. I guess I gave the right answers. The only place I felt remotely alive was the kitchen. I cooked for hours, sometimes all night, not to impress anyone, not for likes or validation, just to keep the loneliness from swallowing me whole. The hiss of oil in the pan, the slow transformation of ingredients, it was the only thing that made sense anymore. But even that started to feel empty. I'd plate dishes for no one, eat cold leftovers standing up, then throw out the rest. The house smelled like comfort food and heartbreak. Bills started piling up. I'd stare at my bank app, adding up what Amanda had taken with her when she left. Half the savings, most of the good cookware, even the stand mixer I'd bought with my first paycheck. I was angry, but mostly I just felt stupid. She hadn't just left me, she'd gutted my life. Left me with the scraps. One night, halfway through a bottle of cheap wine, I snapped a photo of the best meal I'd ever made. A roasted chicken, glistening and golden, surrounded by vegetables slick with butter. My hands shook as I typed out a caption for one of those food forums I used to visit. "First meal I've cooked just for me in a long time." Feels weird, but maybe it's a start. I hit post and turned my phone face down, expecting nothing. But in the silence, the screen started buzzing. One comment, then 5, then dozens. Strangers telling me it looked incredible, asking for the recipe, cheering me on. For the first time since Amanda left, I felt the tiniest flicker of hope. I stared at those comments long into the night, wondering if maybe I hadn't completely lost myself after all. But the world outside my screen was still waiting, hungry to see if I'd ever find my way back. That night, I barely slept. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, notifications piling up, strangers from all over chiming in. "This looks 5-star," one woman wrote. "Open a restaurant, bro," someone else urged. People started tagging their friends, sharing the post, even asking if I delivered. By sunrise, my inbox was flooded with questions. "What's your secret? Can you share the marinade?" I hadn't felt that wanted in years. Still, I wasn't sure it was real. The kitchen was a mess, counters covered in crumbs, pans stacked in the sink. Sunlight crept through the blinds, and for the first time since Amanda left, I didn't flinch at the brightness. When I finally mustered the courage to open the app again, my photo was everywhere, shared by food bloggers, reposted by a local restaurant's page, people dissecting every ingredient like it was a mystery to be solved. I even spotted a comment from an old high school friend I hadn't spoken to in a decade. "Didn't know you had it in you." "Proud of you, man," I laughed, a real ragged sound I barely recognized. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just cooking to fill the silence anymore. There was an entire world out there hungry for what I could make. Maybe Amanda had never cared, but all these strangers did. For the first time, I didn't care how small she'd made me feel. Their words were enough to make me believe I wasn't broken or delusional. Maybe I really did have something worth sharing. That afternoon, I got a DM from someone local, a guy named Rashid who owned a food truck and needed a fill-in for the weekend. "Saw your post. You want to make some real money off that chicken?" My heart hammered. I hesitated for a minute, nerves threatening to drown out the spark of excitement. But I heard Amanda's voice in my head, her laughter, her sneers, and I knew I couldn't hide anymore. I typed back, "Yeah, I'm in. Just tell me when and where." I had no idea what I was getting into, or if I was even good enough. But I knew one thing for sure. This was the first door that had opened for me in years, and I was finally ready to walk through it. The next few days moved like a dream I was terrified to wake up from. Rashid's food truck was parked on a busy corner downtown, bright red, music blasting, the kind of place where you could smell grilled spices from blocks away. The first morning I walked up, hands shaking, apron tucked under my arm, Rashid slapped me on the back and grinned. "Heard you make magic with chicken." "Prove it," my mind screamed with doubts. What if no one liked my food? What if I froze up or ruined a whole service? But something in me burned, maybe spite, maybe hope. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work, losing myself in the rhythm of chopping, seasoning, frying, plating. The line of customers snaked around the block, people craning their necks to see the viral chicken guy. One customer snapped a selfie with me, sending it to his wife with the caption, "Told you I'd find him." Sweat stung my eyes. The city noise pulsed in my ears. Every order felt like a test I couldn't afford to fail. Between tickets, Rashid leaned over and muttered, "Man, they love it. You ever think about doing this full time?" For a moment, the idea seemed ridiculous. I was just a failed husband, a nobody. But when customers started asking if we'd be back next weekend, when people begged for recipes, a new feeling took root. Pride. Real, heavy, bone-deep pride. After we closed up, Rashid handed me a thick envelope, more cash than I'd seen in months. He said, "You're the real deal. Call me anytime." Walking home, my arms ached, my feet hurt, but I felt lighter than I had in years. I cooked dinner for myself that night, spicy wings, roasted potatoes, eating slowly, letting every bite remind me that I was good at something. No matter what Amanda had said, but as I scraped my plate, a familiar dread crept in. Amanda's voice still echoed, "Likes don't pay the mortgage." Bills still sat unopened. The house still felt haunted. For every step forward, something tried to drag me back. Still, for the first time, I wondered if maybe I could build something from scratch. A new life, a new identity far from her shadow, and somewhere deep down, I knew the story was only getting started. A few months into the food truck hustle, I started hearing about the city's annual food festival, a huge deal, packed with local chefs, bloggers, even a camera crew or two. Rashid's eyes lit up when he saw the flyer. "You gotta enter. People already know your name, man." I hesitated, fear curling in my gut. I'd only just started believing in myself. But Rashid wouldn't let up. "If you're scared of her, don't be. You're the better chef, bro. Prove it." It wasn't until the first day of the festival that I realized who else was competing. There he was, Luca, the chef Amanda left me for, laughing with a small crowd, dazzling in his spotless whites. Amanda was by his side, her hand tucked into his arm, the two of them dripping with confidence. My throat went dry. Rashid nudged me. "Ignore them. Cook your food. Do your thing." As I set up my stall, Amanda sauntered over, that old smirk plastered on her face. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said, eyes scanning my little setup. "This isn't really your scene, you know. Luca's up for Chef of the Year." I kept my head down, hands trembling as I prepped my ingredients. "Good luck," I managed, forcing my voice not to crack. Luca winked at me. "May the best man win." For hours I worked like a machine, chopping, frying, plating, praying. People lined up, and soon a small crowd formed, pointing at my sign, whispering, "That's him, the chicken guy." When the judges finally made their rounds, Amanda hovered behind them, watching every move. Luca presented his signature dish, a truffle risotto so perfect it looked airbrushed. I served my best, a spiced, roasted chicken, roots in every flavor I loved. When the winners were announced, time seemed to freeze. Second place, Luca. First place, my name. The cheers drowned out Amanda's gasp. Rashid hugged me, nearly knocking me over. Cameras flashed. People shouted my name. In that wild, dizzy moment, I finally believed I belonged. But as Amanda stared at me from across the crowd, her perfect world cracking just a little, I knew the story between us was far from over, and neither of us had any idea what was coming next. Winning that festival changed everything. By the next morning, my phone was a landmine of opportunities. Local reporters, food bloggers, even a TV producer asking if I'd consider a cooking segment. People came by the truck just to meet me, holding out their phones for selfies, tagging me in posts with darn chicken guy and darn underdog chef. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding my passion. I was living it out loud with the whole city cheering me on. One afternoon, Rashid pulled me aside, grinning. "You ready to level up? I got a friend with a space. Small, downtown, but perfect for a first restaurant. You in?" My stomach twisted with fear and excitement. I barely had savings, but word had gotten around about my story, and a local investor offered to back me, no questions asked. The idea of opening a place with my name on the sign felt surreal, like something that belonged to someone braver than me. The months that followed were a blur of construction dust, sleepless nights, and endless tastings. I obsessed over every detail, the menu, the plates, the playlist echoing through the empty dining room as we scrubbed tables past midnight. My hands ached, my back screamed, but I couldn't stop smiling. The night before the opening, I stood alone in the kitchen, breathing in the scent of fresh paint, rosemary, and hope. Opening night was chaos. Lines out the door, critics scribbling in notebooks, the air alive with nervous laughter and clinking glasses. I spotted familiar faces from the food forum, a couple of old friends, and even Rashid beaming from the front row. I moved from table to table, making sure every plate left my kitchen perfect. The first review dropped at midnight. A hidden gem with the soul of an underdog. Every bite tastes like redemption. I read it 3 times, hands shaking. But even as the restaurant filled with joy and noise, I noticed an empty seat by the window, shadows shifting just out of sight. In the back of my mind, I wondered if Amanda was watching, if she knew I'd finally found the courage she'd spent years crushing, and deep down, I sensed she wasn't done with me yet. It was a rainy Thursday, weeks after the grand opening, when Amanda showed up at my restaurant. I was plating up orders in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, mind racing through tickets, when one of my servers poked her head in. There's a woman asking for you. Says it's important." I stepped into the dining room, heart pounding, and there she was, Amanda, standing by the window, soaked hair plastered to her face, hands twisting the strap of her purse. She looked smaller than I remembered. Gone was the polished bravado, replaced by dark circles and an uncertainty that unsettled me. "Hey," she said, voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the past hanging heavy in the space between us. "This place is beautiful," she managed, glancing around. "I've seen the reviews. You're famous now." I wanted to ask why she was here, what she wanted, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I offered her a seat, more out of habit than anything. Amanda's eyes filled with tears as soon as she sat down. "I messed up," she said, her voice cracking. "I left you for someone who never really cared about me. Luca, he moved on the minute things got hard. I lost everything chasing something I thought I wanted." She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. "I never appreciated what I had with you. I never believed in you, and I'm so sorry." My chest tightened. I remembered every cruel joke, every plate she tossed, every time she made me feel like less. Now, sitting across from me in the restaurant I built from the rubble she left behind, she looked as lost as I'd ever felt. "Please," she whispered, "can we just talk? I miss you. I miss us. I just want to go home." Her words echoed in my ears, blurring with the clatter of plates and laughter of customers behind me. I stared at her, unsure if the ache in my chest was old pain or something new, a kind of closure I'd never let myself imagine. But I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed to feel everything she'd never let me say before, and as the rain drummed harder against the window, I knew this conversation would decide everything. Amanda sat there in the middle of my dining room, tears sliding down her cheeks, makeup smudged by rain and regret. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. All around us, the restaurant hummed with life, laughter, silverware clinking, the kitchen bell ringing, but at our table, time stalled, thick with everything we'd never said. She reached for my hand, voice trembling. "I know I was cruel. I made you feel small. I can't take any of it back, but I can promise I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "Please, I don't want to lose you again!" Her grip was desperate. For years I'd ached for this, an apology, her voice soft and real, not taunting. But now I felt something else, distance, clarity. I looked at Amanda, really looked. The woman who'd dismissed my dreams, laughed at my passion, shattered the version of me that wanted nothing but her approval. I saw how tired she was, how lost. I thought of every night I'd eaten alone, every meal I'd thrown away, every dream I'd buried to keep the peace. I wanted to forgive her, to let the past melt away, but my heart wouldn't move. Not this time. I pulled my hand back. I'm not angry, I said quietly, but I can't go back to the way things were. I built this life from nothing, from the pieces you left behind. I need to know I can stand on my own. Amanda's eyes widened, panic blooming across her face. Please, I'll do anything. I need you. The desperation in her voice almost broke me, but I held the line. No, I whispered, almost to myself. I needed you once. I needed you to believe in me. But I'm not that man anymore. She covered her face, sobbing quietly. Around us, nobody seemed to notice. I sat there, calm in the storm, feeling a kind of power I'd never known. Amanda finally stood, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice hollow. For everything. I watched her leave, the door swinging shut behind her. A final punctuation on a story I never thought I'd escape. But even as the ache lingered, I knew this was the first chapter I'd ever written for myself. And for the first time, I didn't need anyone else's applause. After Amanda left, the restaurant buzzed around me, oblivious to the storm that had just passed through. My staff called out orders, customers laughed at the bar, and outside neon lights flickered on wet pavement. I just sat there, hands folded, feeling the truth settle in. I was free. Not the kind of freedom that comes from revenge or grand gestures, but a quieter one, like waking up from a long, confusing dream. I wandered into the kitchen, the smells of roasted garlic and sweet basil wrapping around me like armor. Rashid was wiping down the counter. He shot me a look, brow raised. You okay, boss? I tried to answer, but my voice cracked. He clapped me on the shoulder, no words needed. In the past, I would have called Amanda, shared every little success and worry. Now, I realized the people who mattered had been here all along, the friends who cheered for me, the customers who believed, the team that hustled through the worst nights without complaint. Later, I stood in the empty dining room, watching the reflection of the restaurant's sign glow in the window. Amanda's apology echoed in my mind, but instead of pain, I felt gratitude for surviving her, for finding myself in spite of her doubt. I remembered her words, her laughter, and finally they lost their sting. I could almost smile at the irony. The woman who broke me had pushed me into the life I was meant for. My phone buzzed, a message from a regular. Dinner was incredible tonight. You're an inspiration, I typed back. Thank you, really. Simple words, but real. I realized then that I'd spent years begging for approval from someone incapable of giving it, when the world was full of people willing to see me for who I was. That night, I locked up, stepped outside into the city's chilly air, and took a deep breath. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe more challenges, maybe more lonely nights. But I knew one thing for certain. I would never shrink myself again for anyone's comfort. And as I walked home beneath the streetlights, every step felt lighter, like I was finally, truly, moving forward. But there was one last truth I still needed to face before I could really begin again. I woke up early the next morning. Sunlight pouring across my bed, the city slowly coming alive outside my window. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. I brewed coffee, stood at the kitchen window, and watched the world without that old ache in my chest. The ghosts of my marriage, the nights of ridicule, the empty dinners, the loneliness, felt distant, faded by the new life I'd built. I realized my pain had become something else, fuel. In the restaurant, I worked with new energy, laughter spilling from me as I called out orders and tried new recipes. Regulars waved when they saw me, kids pressed their faces to the glass, hoping for a free sample. Every dish I plated felt like a small act of defiance, a quiet, steady reclaiming of the man Amanda said I'd never be. I wasn't cooking for approval anymore. I was cooking because it was mine, because it mattered to me. Sometimes people ask how I did it, how I survived the betrayal, the public humiliation, the years of being made small in my own home. My answer is always the same. You take the pain and you use it. You make it the fire that keeps you going when you want to quit. You stop begging for applause and start living for yourself. Amanda never came back. I heard she moved away, started over. I wish her peace. I don't hate her, but I don't owe her my story anymore. I don't owe anyone an explanation for why I finally chose myself. On closing nights, I stand in my empty restaurant and let the silence settle. I think of the boy who used to sneak downstairs to cook in the dark, hiding his passion from everyone. I wish I could tell him, "You'll make it. You'll find your way, and one day you'll be proud of who you are, even if nobody else ever is." That's the real ending. Not revenge. Not heartbreak. Just the quiet victory of turning every ounce of pain into something beautiful, and that's the last thing Amanda ever taught me. I don't need anyone to believe in me but myself.